We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This is Jeremy McFarland for the Football is Family podcast. When you look back on the history of sports, you notice that there are certain events that have a lasting impact, not just on sports itself, but also on society. Those events are remembered and talked about for years to come. Those events are the ones that you will tell your grandchildren about. Not only are there events that change the history of sports, but there are also people who change the history of sports as well. People who maybe destroyed an unspoken rule or fought to make it possible for others to enjoy freedom that they themselves may not ever see. Today's guest on the Football is Family podcast is a firm believer that the history of sports is not only important, but also explains everyday life as well. This was a great interview, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you would like to be part of the Football is Family podcast, please message me at Jeremy_McFarland on Twitter, or follow us on the Football is Family podcast Facebook page. While you're at it, please subscribe to this podcast along with the other podcasts that are available on the Sports History Network. And we're back to Football is Family podcast, and I have a special guest, and I'll tell you what, we were talking before recording, and I've enjoyed just the 5 minutes that we had talking, and I think you're going to enjoy it as well. Would you like to introduce yourself, my friend?
Yes, sir. My name is Dana Auguster, and tonight I'm going to be talking about football, man, which is one of my favorite subjects. Sports history is my favorite subject above all.
Well, but you found the right podcast because this whole network is about history and sports.
Right on. So obviously I'm in the right place. I'm sitting in the right stool at the right bar. So we're all good. All right. So
now you have a Twitter. Let's get that out first.
Historically, SP2 is my Twitter handle, and the name of it is Historically Speaking Sports. And what I normally do on a daily basis is, put out like little nuggets on what happened on this sort of day in history, whatever year it may be, and it's something that I've enjoyed doing. I started doing this I want to say like in March or whatever, trying to find something to do during these crazy pandemic times, to kind of keep myself sane. But it's grown into something, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Now, I have had the opportunity to look at your Twitter page, and it's not just about football. There's a lot of special stuff on it.
Yeah, I do. Well, I'm well-rounded. I mean, football, I love football. I love baseball. Basketball, I'm in there. Hockey, I'm trying to get into, but I know a little bit about hockey. Being from the South, I hadn't had a lot of experience with hockey, so I have to depend on some of my people up north, up in Canada, to kind of educate me a little bit on that. But
you tell them the only ice we have down here is in our sweet tea.
That's right. That's right.
now I'm in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. You spent a lot of time down in Louisiana there.
Yeah.
And you went to Southern University.
Yes, sir.
In Baton Rouge, you said.
Yeah.
Now, I went down and had the opportunity a few years ago. I spoke at a gospel meeting in Hammond, Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
And that is, let me tell you what, it was around the time of Mardi Gras. They didn't go to Mardi Gras, but I did have the cake, and I cannot think of the name of the cake.
King cake.
Oh, it was. I tell you what, I left feeling full and only ate one bite. It was thick.
Yes, that's a king cake. Say no more. I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, I know
Purple.
exactly what you're talking about, and I try to get some of my friends and some of my family back in Louisiana whenever it comes Mardi Gras time to send me one, but it just seems to doesn't even make it to the mailbox. Like, yeah, I wonder why that is.
I tell you what, I can see why people are happy in Louisiana during that time.
There's always something to do. I mean, I tell people that you go to New Orleans on a Tuesday and you're going to find a party somewhere, and they're celebrating just because it's Tuesday.
You know, that, especially this year, Dana, especially this year, we need to be celebrating just the basics and to be the joy to have the chance to just do something, just to do something.
Right.
Anything.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing of it, man, and having the ability to talk, you know, to you tonight, man, that's one of the it brings it's a joy to me because anytime I have a chance to talk about sports history, it's a party for me. It really is, and that's the way I think everybody should find something that they enjoy doing to kind of like pass the time, just to get away from it for a second, you know, and just kind of enjoy being here. And I think that's one of the most important things.
Just make sure you don't eat the baby in the king cake.
That's right. Yeah, I have to. You have to warn people who haven't had it before. They watch out for the baby, because if you do eat the baby, you got to buy the next one.
Yeah, now that's important now. But I have your paperwork here, and it says that you have seen a lot of Saints and Falcons, and
Yes.
you can talk about the rivalry. Now, you said you lived in Louisiana, and you're now in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So obviously, between those two cities or those two areas, you've probably seen a lot and heard a lot from this rivalry. And from what I understand, it's a pretty deep-seated hatred.
You know, I think hatred between the two cities is maybe an overstatement.
Okay.
I think it's more along the lines of jealousy more than anything. Here's what I mean.
Okay.
When you talk about Atlanta, people from New Orleans, I feel, or people from South Louisiana, is kind of jealous of Atlanta because of its influence, because of its wealth, because of, you know, certain things of that nature. Now, on the other hand, I think people from Atlanta is jealous of New Orleans because of Mardi Gras, because of Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, because of the culture. You know, they got beef between jazz and hip hop. You know, jazz in New Orleans, hip hop in Atlanta. There's like a little bit of a jealousy tug of war going on between the two cities, and I think the two football teams are emblematic of that jealousy.
Okay.
You know, because if you think about it, when you think about the Falcons, you know, they're not, in my opinion, they weren't the best team, but the team that mostly, I think, embodied the spirit of Atlanta was the '91 Falcons. That, you know, was led by Jared Glanville, and you had Andre Rison, and you also had Deion Sanders, and that team had so much swagger and so flashy.
Is that the Too Legit to Quit Falcons?
Yeah, the Too Legit to Quit Falcons with Hammer on the sidelines and stuff like that, and they made it to the divisional round of the playoffs that year, where they got thrashed by Washington. You know, but that's emblematic of Atlanta. New Orleans, on the other hand, is the team that basically is like the city. With Drew Brees and Sean Payton, you know that when you watch a Saints game now, it's fun. You're going to have a lot of fun watching that game. Win or lose, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of points scored, a lot of passing yards. That is, the Saints, to me, embodies what New Orleans is. You know, there's an old saying dealing with the Raiders, but it's the same way with both the Saints and Falcons when you say that New Orleans are the Saints and the Saints are New Orleans. So typically, the Falcons are Atlanta and Atlanta are the Falcons.
Now, I spent a lot of time in Atlanta. My wife is from about an hour or so south of there, so we spent a lot of time in Atlanta. Beautiful city. I went to several Braves games. I've even been to Atlanta Hawks game, and that was interesting. They were playing the New York Knicks, so it wasn't much of a game, but whatever. I enjoy my time in Atlanta because I love the big city feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
When I went down to New Orleans, and we spent maybe 4 or 5 hours walking around. It didn't feel like a big city. It felt more like a more laid back, just a earthy feel to it.
Right, right. Um, New Orleans, I think, have more of a European vibe to it. I think
Okay.
than Atlanta. Atlanta just feels like a big city. Atlanta just feels because it's so busy and the traffic and the big
Oh,
business
the traffic.
like that. And trust me, I deal with the traffic every single day.
Yeah.
Uh, but Atlanta does have like this big city vibe to it, But New Orleans is, you're right, is more along the lines of a not a small town, but more of a city that has its own way of doing things. It's a city that is very laid back, like you said, very laid back, very relaxed, very, we're not particularly obsessed with anything. We're just here, and we're just here to have a good time, basically.
Now, Dana, let me ask you this. Where were you during Katrina?
I was living about 50 miles southwest of New Orleans when it hit. So we we didn't get as much damage as New Orleans did, but we did have power for like close to maybe a little bit over a week. We didn't have power. We didn't get flooded or anything where I was. I was in a little town called Houma, which is where my wife's from.
Okay.
And we got damage, not significant damage, like just some fallen trees or whatever, and a lot of rain and stuff like that. But New Orleans really got devastated. But luckily for us, it wasn't that too bad. It was bad enough without power for like close to 2 weeks.
Okay, so you're down in Homer, Louisiana, and you are within an hour drive to New Orleans.
Right.
What type of news were you getting from New Orleans during that time?
Very little, actually. What was so funny was that I had some friends of mine, like I said, live out in Canada. And when we finally got power and finally got phone service and stuff, I called them because I know they were calling me like crazy, like because they probably were watching the news and saw what happened. I called them up and they were like so surprised to hear from me. And I'm like, I'm good, man. What's going on? So it just so happens that we turned the TV on to CNN or some news station or whatever, and we saw what had happened. And because we had heard all kind of rumors about the Superdome was completely destroyed, and downtown is no more, and all of this other stuff. And once we saw what was happening, it was just as bad as we thought, but in a different way. But it was really, really terrible. And I would tell people when I tell people what happened with Katrina, there's no way you could over exaggerate what happened. It was that bad. Okay. And it was that bad in New Orleans, I think, is just starting to come to where it used to be right before Katrina. And we're talking about 15 years later?
Yeah. Yeah. Golly. Doesn't it make you feel old when you can count in the decades?
Yeah, I mean, because my son, like I said, my son is a sophomore in high school, and he was just born when Katrina happened.
Well, okay, so you're looking at, so you have a interest in that area for several reasons, but kind of go along with that. It took them, I think they went warp speed on rebuilding the Superdome. You almost lost your Saints. You really did.
Well, there was talk about the team moving out of New Orleans even before Katrina.
Oh, really?
It didn't go as far as like official talk, but it was like rumors, basically, because at that time, Tom Benson owned the team, and he was originally from San Antonio. And San Antonio had been trying to get an NFL franchise because they already have the Alamo Dome.
Right.
And there was talk at that time, and it was just it didn't go further than rumor that Tom Benson may be in negotiations with the NFL trying to move to San Antonio or anything else. But when Katrina happened, I was one of the people that said, dude, this is a foregone conclusion that they're gone. Especially the damage that the Superdome had and all of that. I really thought that the Saints were as good as gone, and they decided to keep the team and redo the Superdome and renovate the Superdome, which they needed to do for years before then, but they were just dragging their feet on it. And when Katrina happened, it gave them pretty much a blank check. It said, okay, go ahead and do what you got to do. And they just went ahead and did all of the renovations, improved it, new paint job, everything. And it was almost a brand new stadium when it opened, essentially against the Falcons that Monday night.
Now, before we get into that game, because there's one play in particular, you know what it is, that really changed the Saints. What was the feeling down there? Were you present, or did you watch it on TV when they unveiled the sign out front?
I wanted to go. I really, really wanted to go, but I couldn't go for whatever reason. But I would watch the game, and they had like news coverage like for hours before. It was like a Super Bowl, down in New Orleans. It was down in South Louisiana for that night for a Monday night game. It felt like a Super Bowl because they started a pregame shows like I think about 3:00, and the game went until 7. And like the local news, and stuff. And then when they unveiled the banner, right in front of the stadium, it was like, okay, they're actually going to stay. I was like, I changed my mind. They're going to stay. They're going to stay. And you got to understand that most of my family are Saints fans. My wife's a big Saints fan. My son, even though he now is, he likes the Saints, but he also likes the Seahawks. So he kind of trades the two. But most of my family are Saints fans, and they were like really, really hyped. And that night, for that time, I put away my fandom of the Chargers just for that night, really, and became a Saints fan for that particular night. And I was like so hyped when I saw that banner out front. And you could just feel when right before the game started, and they did like a crowd shot, you could just feel the electricity and just coming through the television screen doing that game. You could just feel it, and it's like, and everybody in the state of Louisiana that was a Saints fan, or maybe just a football fan in general, felt like, okay, this is something that we could feel, and we feel like we are actually a part of this kind of the rebirth and rebranding of the Saints.
I don't think that the Falcons had a chance in that game.
They didn't. No, they didn't. They really didn't.
Well, okay. Describe. You know what I'm about to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a hero for so many reasons, but Steve Gleason.
Yep.
That dude was no bigger than a minute. I mean, he was wiry, as they said on a couple videos I watched. He's wiry. But he bust. Well, go ahead and describe the play if you could.
Well, he busts through the center of the line, okay? And from my perspective,
insane, by the way. That's the strongest part of that line, and he did that.
And it opened up like you could drive a truck through it for some reason. And it just opened right up, and you had a straight shot to the punter. And I remember watching it. And and one thing about me, I think it's like that with every football fan, is that you have a feeling that something's about to happen that you just can't explain it, you just can't describe it. It's just almost like a feeling that, okay, something big's about to happen right here, right now. You have to pay attention. And that's exactly what the feeling that I got. He bust right through, and I'm like, oh, he's going to block it. And as soon as he blocked it, everybody went crazy. My wife went crazy. Everybody went crazy, just cheering and stuff. And then Curtis DeLoach recovers the football in the end zone for the touchdown. And now it's like, that's it. It's over. It's over. It's over. And it was like, it felt like the whole entire region of South Louisiana they didn't necessarily cheer because of something good happened. They cheered because it was just something. It was like a relief, like a release. Like, we've been under all of this since Katrina happened. The Saints are here, and this is just a feeling of just a release of, oh yeah, this finally, okay, something good finally happened. And that's the way it felt for a lot of fans. Like, okay, we're going to do this. We're doing this now. And even though it might have been the only win they might have had that year, but it would have felt like this made the season, right?
Absolutely. Now, San Antonio deserves a team. They do. But can you imagine the San Antonio Saints?
Uh, no, I can't. I really can't. I can't. San Antonio, you're right. San Antonio does deserve a team.
They deserve a
They
team.
definitely got a loyal fan base with the Spurs. I mean, just a super loyal fan base. And and then with it being Texas and the popularity of high school football in Texas,
Gosh.
That team would be it would be a natural fit in San Antonio, just a totally natural fit. But
they deserve one, and that, but they don't. The Saints have to stay in New Orleans. They just have to.
Right, and you see it every Sunday. You see it every Sunday with the fans, or when they did have fans. The Superdome being filled like every week. In fact, during the Saints' lean years, it took them 20 years before they had even a winning season. Okay, and in those 20 years, they were always in the top 10 in attendance. Always, even in the days when they played at Tulane Stadium, they were always close to the top in attendance, and they had terrible teams then.
The Aints.
That's right.
Now, Dana, you said something, and it boggles my mind how people become fans of teams.
Mm-hmm.
And there's got to be a story behind your Los Angeles Charger fandom.
Yes,
and I want to preface this that before the Titans came to Tennessee, I was a Denver Bronco fan.
Okay.
And especially when my boy Jay Cutler became the quarterback there, I have a feeling that just seeing Phillip Rivers do what he did to Cutler, the Chargers But I'm going to hold my opinion on the Chargers until you tell me why you like them, and then I'll let you know what I think about them.
Okay. It's a couple things. It's a couple of things. One is based in the typical father-son rivalry. That's one reason. Because my dad is crazy, deep down, hardcore Oakland/LA/LA Las Vegas Raiders fan. He bleeds black and silver. Bleeds it. He loves the Raiders. And as a kid growing up, I got into football when I was like 8 years old. And as most kids that grew up in South Louisiana, you either like five teams. It was the Saints, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Oilers, or the Raiders. And I just could not identify with either one of them. So at that time, there was a team out in the West Coast that had the lightning bolts on their uniforms, and it seemed like they scored 35, 40, 45 points every game. Now, some of those games they would actually lose, but they scored a lot of points, and there's just something about them that I just gravitated towards. With Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow and John Jefferson and, Radon West Chandler and Chuck Muncie, who came from the Saints, by the way. There was just something about them that I just gravitated towards. And one Monday night, they played the Raiders. No, it was a regular season game. It was on a Sunday afternoon. They played the Raiders on national TV. And the Chargers beat them something like 50-something to 20 or whatever. And Kellen Winslow caught 5 touchdown passes, and just embarrassed the Raiders. And my dad was just sitting there just fuming the whole time. And I was I was loving it. And then from that point on, yes, I like this team. The blue and gold, the lightning bolts on their helmets and stuff. It just seemed like they were just so cool, and there was just something about them that I just gravitated towards. And I belong to this Facebook group of Charger fans, and I tell them all the time that in some cases, you don't choose your team, the team chooses you. And I think that the Chargers chose me in a way because everything about them I've always liked, the high scoring, because they've always been a team that has been associated with high scoring and offense and stuff. Yeah. And like the Titans, for example, you think of the Titans, you think of power running backs.
Absolutely.
With Derrick Henry and Eddie George, and going back to the Oilers days with Earl Campbell, and then the early 60s with Charlie Tolar. I mean, these were hardcore power running backs. And every team has a certain identity, and the Chargers' identity has always been offense, and I've always been partial to offense.
Now tell me this, Dana. You Man, I respect that. I'm giving you a hard time. People like what they like, and I support that. That's part of the reason why I like doing this podcast. I want to know why people like what they like. Do you have a powder blue hat?
I used to. It got messed up. I got one. I got a couple. I got one in the closet, but it got messed up because I got caught in the rain with it, and it
Oh,
up. So, but I am getting one. You know, like a whole collection of Charger hats over the years.
Now, the one thing I could say about the Chargers, in my last, the previous podcast that I released over jerseys, we talked about this. To me, the Chargers, the powder blue and maybe even the white pants or the powder blue and the yellow pants are the best combination in the NFL.
They are. I mean, I'm just being in total bias, and as it turns out that I attended Southern University and their colors were powder blue and gold as well. But the Chargers powder blue and gold combination that is emblematic of Southern California. It just is.
It is.
I mean, Southern California. In fact, those are actually my wedding colors as a matter of fact. Powder blue.
See, that's how you fully immerse yourself into fandom right there.
You know, I also have a fandom of UCLA, same color.
Very similar colors.
You know, but the powder blue and gold combination is something that I've always felt that that's a cool color combination. Chargers uniforms, number one, point blank, the end.
Do you like the numbers on the helmet, or do you just like the lightning bolts?
I like the numbers on the helmet. Because it gives it a little bit more of a retro look.
It does. I like them too. It's very similar to just basically college. Let's put the numbers on the helmet. Very sweet looking.
You know, and that's they tried to go all the way back to the way it looked in the 60s and early 70s. With the numbers on the sides of the helmet, because it gives it a little bit more of a look of the old AFL, type of thing. And that's one of the things that I fell in love. I like that. Now, the color rush jerseys, the ones they wore yesterday with the Falcons, with the royal blue, I like that.
I'm gonna have to look that up real quick.
It was a royal blue with the gold lightning bolt.
We don't get a lot of. Oh my goodness, you're not joking. Now I always like the white helmets. For some reason, I think that they're just clean looking and they're very nice. It's very. You couldn't mistake the Chargers for any other team but the Chargers with those jerseys on.
Yep. Now, don't get me wrong. Now another jersey I liked from back in, not too long ago was the original Titans jerseys, the original Tennessee Titans jerseys. When it first came in, when it first moved to Tennessee, and they renamed, and Bud Allen renamed them the Titans, that one right there. That one.
I'm showing a bobblehead of Vince Young. My son got it when we went up there in 2006 Offensive Rookie of the Year. I wish he turned out like he should have. But, yeah, you're talking about the jersey. That's the two-tone. That's Eddie George and Steve McNair.
Yep. And the greatest – and it's funny that you mentioned Steve McNair. When I was at Southern the same time Steve McNair was at Alcorn State.
Did you get to see him play?
That was one of the greatest college football games I had ever seen in person. When they played Southern, Southern won. I think the score was something like 56-45 or something like that.
Good gracious!
And it was, I think it still is the most attended Southern University home game ever. I think it had like 50,000 there.
It was because of Steve McNair, wasn't it?
Because Steve, I think that year finished third in the Heisman.
There was and I don't have it anymore, and I kind of kicked myself, but I had an issue of the Sports Illustrated that had him on the cover that said, "Give him the Heisman." Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was watching him play when he was at Alcorn State in person. There's some things that I've seen him do I haven't seen any other quarterback do since. As far as like his mobility, his accuracy, the way his arm strength, his escapability when he was at Alcorn was something to behold. Now you saw a little bit of that on that final drive against the Rams in the Super Bowl. You saw a little bit of that, but imagine watching that. There was one play that I remember doing that last drive when he got on that last drive going down the field when that ill-fated play to Kevin Dyson. You kind of saw a little bit of that. You saw a little bit of that Alcorn State type of athleticism, on that final drive.
It looked like he jammed his leg, like it almost bent Barbie style inward when he stopped. And that's the one thing, and it's one thing that people don't understand about Steve McNair. When he was here in Tennessee, they said, well, he missed a lot of games. That dude, number one, never complained.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, had so much physical problems because of football that he was, I don't think he practiced during the week ever.
Mm-hmm.
But he is one of those guys that you call a gamer.
Yeah. He was like that at Alcorn. He was like that the whole time he was at Alcorn State. And you could tell that by the way he played. And I became a fan of his when he came to the NFL. First came with the Oilers, when he came with that contingent when he moved to Nashville. But watching him play was just something special. And I talk to my son about him all the time, about how great of a player he was, and how great of a, teammate he was. But above all, he was a leader. He was one of the best and unheralded leaders that you could find. A lot of people talk about his athleticism and his arm strength, but never about his leadership. And that was something that he was very adept at as a leader for any team, whether it's for Alcorn State or the Titans.
Now, there's a story about him, and I got a couple more questions for you after this, but there was a story about him. I don't know if he was at Alcorn State or his rookie year for the Oilers at the time, but they had something where they had a pig. They had to catch the pig, and everybody was trying. The pig is, if you've ever seen pigs run, they are fast, they're jittery. You think the big sows, they can't run, they can move. They can move. And he said that everybody was diving to get the pig, and all Steve did was reach down, grab his leg, and pick it up. And the coach said, "You are country strong."
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of that shows you who Steve McNair was. He was just a good old country boy who did well in football.
He's from Mount Olive, Mississippi.
And you know what? Regardless of how his life ended, how we remember him in Nashville is that play, Super Bowl 34. We remember 1 yard because he led us there.
Yeah.
And that's how I respect, again, regardless of how his life ended, you throw that away.
Yeah.
You remember him out on the field.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. If you had the chance right now, and I've asked a couple of people this, but I want to ask you this, and you had a chance right now to own, are you a collector? You merch memorabilia or just things that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, actually, I do. There's still in Louisiana that I have to go get that my dad had pretty much confiscated from me, but I have like a collection of Charger helmets.
Oh, really?
Real Chargers, actual Charger helmets. The only one I don't have is the new one, but I got everyone else.
Okay, and I tell you what, I respect that. If you could just reach back in time and grab one thing for yourself, what would it be?
Oh, man, that's a great question.
I asked the hard-hitting questions there, Dana.
That is a great question. I'm gonna tell you what I would love to get my hands on, right? If I could find the actual jersey of John Hadle, the quarterback of the Chargers, because he was the original number 21 of the Chargers.
Yes, he was, wasn't he?
The original 21. And he was a quarterback that didn't look like a quarterback. Ron Mix told a story that he thought he was one of the equipment guys when he first showed up with the Chargers when he was drafted out of Kansas. But he was short, he was stocky, but he had an arm, and he knew, and he really understood Sid Gilman's playbook. And that was one of the reasons why they were such a high-scoring team in the 60s. Now they won one championship in the AFL, but it wasn't with Hadle at quarterback. Hadle was the backup. It was Tobin Rote. But Hadle had so many of the passing records before Dan Fouts came along. But John Hadel's jersey is one of the things that I would love to have and hang up and show people that he was the original, like, number 21 of the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now. The one that most people would recognize is probably one of the greatest runners ever is LT.
Yeah.
But you're talking John Hadl, Hadl, quarterback from 62 to 72. And I tell you what, that's not a bad person to want his jersey. He had AFL All-Star 4 times. That's impressive. That's impressive. So here's my final question, and I'll leave you with this. And I appreciate your time, Dana. And I'll tell you what, let's have you back on.
All right, man. Look, anytime you need me, man, just give me a holler, bro. I'm here. You
are a friend of the show because you are real and you are true, and you're telling me everything I want to hear.
Right.
Which is history. I love it. I love it. But if you could if I give you a piece of granite right now and a chisel and a hammer, and you can make your own Mount Rushmore of Charger players, who would it be?
Okay, it would be, for one, the first one would, of course, be Lance Allworth.
Oh, yeah, Bambi. Got to have him on there.
Lance Allworth was one of the reasons why I fell in love with the Chargers, because I saw old film clips of him when I was like 8, 9 years old, and it was like I had never seen anybody that fast ever. I mean, he was one of the fastest receivers I had ever seen. And the thing about him, he was not only fast, but he was smooth. You know, his route running and his just overall pass catching ability, along with his speed, was just something. And, you know, I would forgive him for being a teammate of Jerry Jones at Arkansas, but something you just can't.
You can't help who your teammate is, I guess.
You can't help that. But, yeah, I mean, Lance Allworth would be the first one.
Okay.
Second would be Dan Fouts. Because Dan Fouts, to me, is my all-time favorite quarterback, period. You know, as far as like all of the quarterbacks, you know, I love John Elway. I love, you know, all of the Montana Brady's. But to me, my all-time favorite quarterback of all time is Dan Fouts. First of all, how many quarterbacks did you know of at the time that had like a beard that made him look like a mountain man?
You know, I was about to say, I don't think I ever seen him without a beard.
I have, when he was at Oregon, and he looked so funny without a beard. And there was, you know, because he was teammates with Ahmad Rashad at Oregon, and there's a picture of the two of them, and you was like, wait, is that Dan Fouts? They had to put it in a caption like Ahmad Rashad and Dan Fouts. I'm like, that can't be Dan Fouts. And sure enough, it was. And because he looked so different without a beard. And Dan Fouts was my first football hero. Because it just seemed like, now his career didn't go off to a great start, but once he got together with Don Coryell, then that was it after that.
Yeah, he doesn't look normal. He looks more like who played Dick Tracy, Warren Beatty. He looks more like Warren Beatty.
He does. I mean, now that you mentioned it, you're absolutely right. He looks a lot like Warren Beatty without the beard. You're absolutely right about that.
So we got Lance Allworth. We got Dan Fouts.
Third one would be LT, obviously, LaDainian Tomlinson. I remember watching him at TCU, and at the time, you got to understand that the Chargers were terrible. They were absolutely terrible at that time. And they had the number 1 pick. And they traded that number 1 pick, which would have been Michael Vick, to Atlanta for, you know, and they got 2 picks in return. One was LT, the other was Drew Brees.
Brees, yes.
And as luck would have it, Drew Brees hurt his shoulder and it ended up being sent to New Orleans. And which is another story, but LT was just phenomenal to me. You know, he was just absolutely just amazing. You know, as running backs go, he had like a little bit of Barry Sanders, a little bit of Walter Payton. You know, had a little power with him too. Could catch the ball, throw the ball, could pretty much do everything. You know, a lot which reminded me a lot of Walter Payton. And then they had the moves like Barry Sanders at times, you know, but I mean, and then plus he was just so humble and so easy to like. And that Hall of Fame speech that he gave when he entered the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago was amazing. If you ever have a chance to go check out that Hall of Fame speech that he made, go check it out, because it's not only it's also timely now. Some of the things that he talked about is something that people should kind of like listen to and kind of emulate even now with what's going on. And the last one would have to be a coach, and that coach would be Sid Gilman, because he was the one who essentially invented modern passing. Everything that teams are doing now is a derivative of the offense that Sid Gilman created in the late 50s, early 60s with the one-back, vertical passing game with some elements of the West Coast offense. That was his offense. You had asked the question earlier, what piece of memorabilia would I like to have? I would like to have, John Hadel's jersey, and I would also love to have the playbook of Sid Gilman. Just to look through it and just see just some of the things that he was talking about, and some of the theories that he had, which I thought was just pretty awesome.
And you got to have the pipe too.
Yeah, absolutely, the pipe and the bow tie. The pipe and the bow tie.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Dana, and one last thing, I tell you what, of all the Super Bowl rings, to me the Saints are there's probably top three.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It's
that
beautiful.
Is a gorgeous ring. That is an absolutely gorgeous ring. You're right.
Now, to me, I love the basic. I love the old school Cowboys. But if you're going to have a newer one, it would be the Saints.
Yeah, you're right. Because I think a friend of mine actually has a poster of the Saints championship ring. He made it into a poster and put it into like his man cave or whatever. And I thought it was just amazing.
I respect that. Everybody has their own nerd in them somewhere, and that's a nerd, and I respect that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here looking across my office here, and I have a cutout of Mark Mariani carrying around a World WWE Championship belt. So I've got my level of nerd too.
That's pretty neat.
We are what we are. But even more, I got a Derrick Henry pop up here.
Okay.
And I'm afraid that he's going to bust through and stiff arm me any moment.
Look, that's something that you have to be afraid of.
You want to know what's funny? I played him yesterday in Madden. We did a fantasy draft with my friend, and I was like, you know what? He's going to stiff arm me. And the first thing he did? He stiff armed J.J. Watt and just put him in the turf. I'm like, yep, that's the way the game's going to go.
Yeah. He's a load. He's definitely a load, no doubt.
Well, Dana, thank you for your time. And again, plug your Twitter page and tell us you're working on getting a podcast together.
Yes, I'm working on getting a podcast together because I think, I was kind of on the fence about it, but after spending time with you and stuff and having some ideas float in my head, I'm like, well, definitely I got to do this. My Twitter feed is Historically Speaking, and it's historically SP and the number 2. And I talk about all kinds of different things that happen on this date in history, as well as other observations in sports history. Not just football. I talk about baseball. I talk about basketball, Olympics, boxing, whatever that I may come across and may find interesting. And I'm going to use that as a basis for my podcast in the near future.
Well, you have an easy way of talking. I love your cadence. I love you. I love who you are, my friend. And I just met you. So keep it up. And when you're ready to get going, let me know and we will plug it.
Hey, man. Hey, once I get ready, I'm looking to try to get started probably around the first of the year to get it started. And hopefully, barring any unforeseen circumstances, it's going to happen probably around the first of the year.
Well, you let me know and we will plug it on this podcast and on my Twitter page and my Facebook page. We'll get it.
All right, man. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
And is football family to you?
Football family right back to you, brother.
Take it easy, my friend.
All right, man. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings you sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorum Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.